The holiday season is upon us, and the Godzilla franchise has certainly given us a lot of gifts so far in 2023. That all started with Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. Of course, we got the first trailer for Godzilla x Kong, The Fallen Empire. And we're gonna round it out here with Godzilla Minus One, which is, frankly, an absolute gem.
Frame. Skip. Get ready. It's gonna be a very, very intense journey.
It's hard to believe it's already been 7 years since the release of Shin Godzilla back in 2016. The franchise hasn't been totally dormant since then. Of course, we've gotten various entries in the MonsterVerse saga, including Godzilla vs. Kong. We've also gotten Godzilla Singular Point on Netflix and other things on Netflix, including the CGI Godzilla animated films. But when it comes to the live action, Toho Studios produced Godzilla films, Godzilla Minus One marks the first one since 2016. And I have to say, what a return to form this movie is. I was totally enthralled with Godzilla when I was a kid, and honestly, it was mostly because of the rubber costumes, the fight sequences, the awful acting at times. There was just something charming about that to me that you don't really get these days with a lot of these big budget blockbuster movies. You know, it's just something different. It's something you don't see anymore. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten to the point where I've started to enjoy the more serious films more, like the original Godzilla 1954, like Shin Godzilla, which is obviously a play on the whole Fukushima disaster in Japan in 2011, has some very serious real-life ties in that movie. And Godzilla Minus One returns to that serious note. You get so much World War II allegory here, and it's frankly just fascinating. Godzilla Minus One is directed and written by Takashi Yamazaki, and it kicks off in 1945 at the end of World War II. That setting continues to spread out, takes place about over a 2-year period during post-war Japan. Now, I'm not going to show anything or spoil anything plot-wise here that hasn't already been mentioned in the trailers for Godzilla Minus One, but I do think it's really important to note that the setting here, World War II, post-World War II, the characters, they're all very deliberate in the fact that they are really trying to show the horrors of warfare in World War II, and frankly, atomic and nuclear warfare as well. I have to say that those familiar with World War II, that era of history, certainly Japanese history from that era, there's a lot to chew on here. There are a lot of very serious metaphors that this movie presents that, again, really truly show the realities of World War II. And so for that reason, personally, I think this is probably the most accessible Godzilla film to date. Not only is this a completely standalone film, doesn't tie into Shin Godzilla, really doesn't tie into any Godzilla movie ever made, it's just its own thing. You do also get that real historical tie that I think really anybody can relate to because this stuff actually happened. The human plotline in this movie is absolutely emotional. I mean, I really think this is probably the best human plotline we've ever gotten in any Godzilla film of any variety, whether it's American made or Japanese made. I really do feel that way. Godzilla, you know, he frankly is here to wreck shop, just like an atomic bomb, and they make that very clear throughout this film. And you feel the weight of that devastation through the eyes of these characters in this film, and I mean, there were several times where I teared up, and I don't know that I've ever done that on a sad note in a Godzilla film before. You know, certainly I've had moments where, you know, Godzilla King of the Monsters, seeing Burning Godzilla again from Godzilla vs. Destroyer, one of my all-time favorite Godzilla films. The excitement of that made me tear up, but I can't say that I've ever had sadness bring me to tears in a Godzilla movie, and that absolutely happened here. And frankly, it's because of the actors in this film who are so good. Just to pick on one specific person, The main character, Koichi Shikishima, he's portrayed by Ryunosuke Kamiki, and he is just a true gem. Real highlight of this movie. You, again, really feel the weight of Godzilla's devastation and impact on this world thanks to his phenomenal acting. By the way, quick little side note on Ryunosuke that I found pretty interesting after I watched this movie. He was kind of regarded as a childhood prodigy and was singled out by Hayao Miyazaki to be a character, be a voice actor in some of the Studio Ghibli movies. Was very prevalent in many of the Studio Ghibli movies from the early 2000s into the 2010s. And he's had just a plethora of voice acting roles, including he played Taki, one of the main characters in Your Name, which one of the best Japanese anime movies of all time. Would highly recommend watching that movie if you have not seen it. But just found that interesting. I didn't really know much about him as an actor and was very impressed by his acting in this film. Now, I do, of course, need to get to the elephant in the room here. Maybe not an elephant, maybe more of a giant lizard, Godzilla. I haven't talked about him at all. Of course, he's the star of the show. The movie is called Godzilla Minus One. This is still a Godzilla movie at its core, even though the human plot line here is excellent. I've got to say his design is extraordinarily cool. Very cool design. You know, whoever decided they were going to give his dorsal fins this kind of extruding movement whenever he uses his atomic breath. Brilliant decision. Really ups the ante in this movie. And you know, I'm having a hard time comparing him to Shin Godzilla. I think they're both terrifying and horrifying in their own ways, but I think overall I actually prefer this Godzilla design. It is certainly more original. It certainly does go back to your more standard Godzilla design, where Shin Godzilla, of course, a little more abnormal, but I think that was the point with Shin Godzilla, was to be something very different. This one, you know, you truly feel his devastation. His design is, you know, built in a way where you're able to just look at him and feel scared and also feel like he's pretty cool. So I don't know. I really like his design overall. I don't know where I'd rank it as far as my top Godzilla designs, but he's certainly up there. By the way, the CGI in this film, certainly around Godzilla, but there are other sequences too. You know, the water, a lot of the water sequences are CGI. Excellent. And, you know, it may not be as high quality as some of your big budget blockbusters. You know, the Marvels just came out, the MCU movie, and Indiana Jones 5 that came out over the summer. Those movies had like $300 million budgets, whereas Godzilla Minus One, it only has a budget of $15 million, which is like nothing by comparison. So when you look at this film with that in mind, comparing it to some other big budget blockbusters that we've had in recent years, here in the US at least, in Western culture, it's incredibly impressive to know that they were able to take this, again, very small budget for a blockbuster film and pump out this incredible CGI for that kind of money. One final note here, the score in this movie is excellent. It really adds to the tension throughout. There are many sequences that I really feel wouldn't have been as tense had the score not been as good as it is. A lot of great audio surprises as well. Those that have listened to, or watched rather, Godzilla movies for many years of their life, as I have, you'll be very impressed, and certainly a lot of fun callbacks. To wrap up here, I want to go back to something I said earlier. This is kind of the TLDR for this review. This is a movie that I feel like I would recommend to anybody. This is, in my opinion, again, the most accessible Godzilla movie, and there's just so much here to enjoy for somebody who has never seen a Godzilla movie before or has no interest in a Godzilla movie. I think there's so much here from a historical standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, that anybody can get behind this film, and anybody should see this film. It's only going to be in theaters in the US at least for a few more days, so it may no longer be there at the time of you watching this video, but I would certainly recommend you seeing it as soon as you possibly can, even if you're not a longtime Godzilla fan. I think it's well worth the watch. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what you're interested in. This is an emotional movie and it really deserves your support because we've, of course, had many fun Godzilla movies and we'll have many fun Godzilla movies to come. But this has a great story, great allegory, and truly is impactful when you're talking about things that went down in this world in history, 70, 80 years ago. So, what did you think of Godzilla Minus One? Have you seen it? If not, do you want to see it? Let me know in the comments down below. Love to hear from you. Austin Eller here with Frame Skip. We'll catch you next time.